It's Thursday, which means Thursday night football. Are the Minnesota Vikings heading into this matchup to go 0-2? If so, are they trending backwards from 2022 to 2023? We'll tell you next on the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You already know where you can find me on Twitter at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout over with the Draft Network, as well as the host of the Locked On. Well, I don't even got the hat turned around, but Locked On Clemson Football Podcast. And you already know that where you can find that podcast on YouTube as well. But guys, thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Thank y'all for being our everydayers, man. And I got my guy, Keith. You already know, Mr. LSU, Mr. Football himself. The champ is here. You guys can follow him on Twitter at The Talent Code. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst with the Draft Network, man. And DP said it, 2019 national champ with those LSU Tigers, man. But you know why we're here, right? Myself, DP, man, we're here to bring you that championship level content each and every single day, 24/7, 365. This is where you tap in for everything NFL draft related, right? We cover it all from high school to college to football. We do it all to college to the NFL. I'm sorry. We do it all. So let's get this thing started. DP, on today's slate, man, we're talking Eagles versus Vikings today, right? We had the biggest storylines. We're talking about which impact prospects to watch because we have injuries. When injuries happen, what happens? Young guys have to step up. That's why we say the draft always matters, man. And then we're going to do what we always do, man. Give a little game prediction. We know that this was a blowout last year. This was a blowout, a primetime blowout last year. But we're going to give a little game prediction to see if we throw a little curveball in there. DP, before we get this thing started, man, why don't you hit on with our title sponsor?
This crossover Thursday episode of Locked On NFL Draft is brought to you by Prize Picks. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Biggest storyline, guys, and I think one of the main things right now that I'm looking at, Keith, like you said, last year, this matchup was a blowout. Well, you know that this is a team that really had a good season in 2022 with the Minnesota Vikings.
They did.
But they just lost to Baker Mayfield in his first start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that we feel like is tanking or making that decision they were tanking. If the storyline I'm looking at, Keith, is if they lose this game, the Minnesota Vikings, you go 0-2 to start the season. Are they trending backwards?
That's a good question. And what there was yesterday's podcast, the day before yesterday's podcast, when I talked about the Packers winning the NFC North, right? And I talked about the reason I said that was because of the Bears. You can go ahead and throw the Vikings in that equation too, right? Because there's no reason why you lose to the Tampa Bay Bucks in that fashion. I believe that they were up on the Tampa Bay Bucks also. And the Bucks came back. So there's no reason why you lose to that team of being the Minnesota Vikings. DP, I think it's trending backwards, right? But this was going to hurt a little bit more for the Minnesota Vikings because I don't think that it was a predetermined setback, right? I think they tried to evolve this offense, and we're going to talk about a draft prospect, right, with Jordan Addison. And Jordan Addison showed up. We said it. We really like him in this Minnesota Vikings offense, right, opposite of Justin Jefferson, TJ Hockenson in this offense, right, and Kirk Cousins. If he hasn't shown anything else, he's going to throw for a lot of yards. He's going to throw for a lot of yards, and he's going to feed his wide receivers. So we know that Jordan Addison is going to be productive. DP, I view this move for them as taking a step forward from the perspective of, okay, we're drafting Jordan Addison. We're just going to become more explosive and pass the ball even more, right? Almost like in a way, kind of doubling down on what we do, right? Like if y'all going to key in on Justin Jefferson, we're going to go get another wide receiver because what they did was they traded out kind of Jordan Addison for Dalvin Cook, right? As far as they don't play the same position, but as far as the productivity part, right? Like, okay, we're going to try to compensate for Dalvin Cook being gone by drafting a wide receiver and, hoping that he can be that second playmaker to Justin Jefferson in his offense, DP. So what stands out to me, and I want to get your take on this, is that they can be 0-2. The question is, can they recover, right? And that's why you can't lose the game against the Bucs, because then you have to play the Eagles, right? Which is a good football team. So my question is, can they recover from 0-2? When you look at this roster, you look at the young guys, you look at the key contributors, can they recover from 0-2?
I think it's tough, man. Because I'm gonna tell you the most alarming thing. Now, and some people may say because it's the Tampa Bay Bucs defense. Keith, like you talked about, they basically traded in Dalvin Cook for Jordan Addison, essentially. Keith, they ran their ball 16 times, 41 yards, 2.6 yards per carry. Kirk Cousins.
That's not going to cut it.
That is not going to cut it, right? Kirk Cousins out here throwing the ball 44 times? 44 times, right? And I think Justin Jefferson was cooking up like through the first half. I think majority of his yards were through the first half of the game. And in the second half, it seemed like they were able to kind of slow him down and everything like that. So like Jordan Addison had the big touchdown catch and everything. But even the passing game, 344 yards, 150 of that, it came from Justin Jefferson himself. But so I think it's not saying that it's impossible, but I do have some trepidation, some worries about them being able to bounce back, because Keith, I'm gonna tell you the other thing that really bothered me in that, watching that game and even and everything else. 12 pressures, 6 hurries, 5 QB hits in the sack. Ed Ingram, Keith, your boy from LSU, who I liked. We both liked.
You gotta watch what you say, DP. You gotta watch what you say, man.
Listen, Ed, bro, Ed was rough last year. Ed, per PFF, Ed was charted for 4 pressures, 2 of those hurries, 1 of the QB hits, and a sack. So it's like he's almost doubling down on the bad performance he gave last year. So right. I'm just like, I do have some concerns with that offensive line on the right side, being able to protect him. And now going into this game, that goes into the second storyline. The injuries on both sides of the ball, Keith, on both sides of the ball. Nakobe Dean going to IR, right? So you got Nakobe Dean going to IR. What's the starting corner name? James Bradbury. He's out this game. So that's the Philadelphia Eagles defense, right? Yeah, for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then when you look at I was looking at the I think what's the Bradbury, the center for
the center, Garrett Bradbury.
He's out. So they're starting a new center for the Eagles. And I'm like, wait a minute, y'all had trouble protecting Kurt like against that Tampa Bay D line. The Eagles D line has dudes, like about 10 of them. So like in terms of can they rebound from this, I don't know, man. I have some real concerns, Keith, about their ability to run the ball and protect their quarterback, and their defense hasn't shown anything yet either. You just lost to Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, so I would go with that, DP, and we talked about this yesterday. Young guys gonna have to show up, right? And unfortunately, over the past, I think 2 drafts, right? They haven't had the full allotment of draft picks, right? Because they've traded away some things. And so this past draft, right, that was Jay Ward, Jaquel, and Roy, right? Then the year before that, that's Brian Asamoah, and a couple other guys, Ty Chandler, right, who they drafted late at the running back position. Mm-hmm. So that the young guys, once again, they're going to have to step up. And I hope that, our listeners are understanding the reason we do this Locked On NFL Draft podcast is because it always plays itself forward into the NFL season, right? These young guys end up playing. These 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounders, they end up playing because the NFL season is a war of attrition. Now it's just a matter of whose attrition gets activated earlier, right? And the Vikings, like you talked about, this center being out, right? And then now, because you look at Lewis Sign, and I believe he's healthy for this game, DP. But that's always something that you have to worry about with Lewis Sign. And then, like I said, you have that tandem of him, Jay Ward. What are they going to do on the back end of the defense? And,
Andrew Booth Jr.
Yeah, Andrew Booth Jr. and that such. So it's definitely a lot going on with the Minnesota Vikings. DP, you hinted at it already, and I want to give them and spin a segment on it, right? And that's the Philadelphia Eagles, because you talk about injuries. They have injuries. They have a couple of them that occurred already. And we're talking about key names that we thought were going to contribute early. So we want to see what are the Philadelphia Eagles going to do moving forward as they try to overcome these injuries. Week 2, we know the Vikings can put up points. So how are they going to defend the Minnesota Vikings? So coming up next, we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, their injury report, and what young players are going to have to step in and step up.
With storms, shortages, pandemics, reliance on overseas travel, and supply chain issues, we need to be prepared now more than ever. Guys, Jace Medical is the way to go. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during unexpected times. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace case. The Jace case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you're not just hoping that you have access to the medication you need in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure that you have the medication in hand. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using the promo code Locked On at checkout. And all you got to do is go to jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Philadelphia Eagles, Keith, looking at their injury report, talked about Nakobe Dean being out, James Bradbury being out, safety Reed Blankenship didn't practice, I think, all week. He's dealing with a rib injury. Kenneth Gainwell is not expected to play on a short week, and he was, I think, their top RB for the week because, looking at like DeAndre Swift, they got Boston Scott, Rashad Penny, who's supposed to be active for this game. Penny was inactive last game. Then you have Boston Scott and DeAndre Swift, and they saw minimal action. So it's going to be like they have to figure some stuff out. And talking about prospects to watch, Sidney Brown at safety, right? And then for me, Keith, Josh Jobe at corner. Two young guys who are going to have to step up in this game against a team that clearly, for the Minnesota Vikings, is going to have to pass the football.
Yeah, no, I agree, DP. They're going to throw the football. And even last year, right, with the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's just going to make this an interesting dynamic that I feel like if the Vikings can find a way to block, right, the weak point of this defense even last year was what? The secondary, right? So those young guys are going to have to contribute. And I'd be interested to see which guys they give run to, right? Like because obviously Darius Slay will be on one side, but like you said, you have a Josh Jobe, you have a Vontae Maddox, you have Keely Ringo, Elias Ricks, right? Like which young guy do they say, okay, it's week 2, but we got to throw you in there, right? Week 2 on a short week. So some of these guys have been on a 53-man roster for not long at all, right? They've only went through one NFL game, and they didn't even get a full week of preparation for the next week before they're thrown out there into the next NFL game against one of the best passing attacks, DP. So I think for me, that's going to be interesting. Can I transition also? Nakobe Dean, right, being on the IR for the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's going to be out multiple weeks, but he's not playing in this game. And then Fletcher Cox, he's listed as questionable. He's been limited at practice, so he's listed as questionable. And who knows if he goes or not. But I think, DP, that's going to make for an interesting conversation because now you're talking about right up the middle of the defense, right? You're talking about safety Reed Blankenship. Then second level is Nakobe Dean. Then on that D line is Fletcher Cox. So the Philadelphia Eagles, this is going to be interesting to see how they handle these injuries early.
100%. When you look at Zach Cunningham and Christian Ellis, those will be 2 linebackers that have to step up and make plays for this Philadelphia Eagles defense, Keith, because at the end of the day, when you have a TJ Hockenson at tight end, and you know that the Vikings don't mind running crossers because Kevin O'Connell comes from that, was it Sean McVay style offense and everything. So like, that they'll stretch you horizontally and put pressure on you that way, give you eye candy with pre-snap motion and different things like that to really stress the movement, lateral movement, and discipline of said linebackers. So those are guys that absolutely have to make plays. And then, of course, Jalen Carter, Keith, he was the best defensive player, for this team last week, right? He was an absolute stud. But, Keith, he only played, I think, a total of 40 defensive snaps. So you already know, right? So he played 40. Jordan Davis played 35. You know what I mean? Like, so when you look at it, he's going to have to play more snaps if Fletcher Cox can't go, because he has allowed him to have, like, with his presence, Fletcher Cox can just kind of be like a legitimate, like, rotational guy where they don't have to use him snap in and snap out at his age, and let him just be fresh legs late in games and stuff like that to push the pocket and be the big beast that he is. Jalen Carter, and then you think about what we talked about, the center, Garrett Bradbury being out, and they're starting Austin Schlottman. You know, he's going to be the starting center. Jalen Carter,
not a good combination.
Go dominate, man. Like, you know, so you need to go see him go out there and ball. But I'm going to tell you, Keith, straight up, like, I think big play Slay is going to get the test of Justin Jefferson, right? He's going to more than likely follow him all over the field, stuff like that. I really am interested in seeing that battle between Josh Jobe, who I really liked a lot coming out of Alabama, versus Jordan Addison. I'm really going to watch, because I want to see with Kirk Cousins, will he, like, okay, are you going to test big play Slay? I don't know if that's a great, I mean, it's Justin Jefferson, and I get it, but you got to be a little more calculated. You can't just force passes into tight coverage, because you know that's what, I think last year, Slay was able to kind of blanket Justin Jefferson.
He might have had an interception in that game also. Like, he did a pretty good job against Justin, because I remember him talking trash too, whether it was on Twitter after the game or something like that. Like, there was some type of back and forth.
Slay's gonna talk. Slay gonna talk.
So DP, my question would be: you brought up the matchup, Josh Jobe versus Jordan Addison, and they're probably gonna be in one-on-one situations. Who you going with? Who do you think win that battle? And is that a key matchup to determine the outcome of the game?
I think it could be. You know what I mean? Of course, it all relies on not even the arm, the mind of Kirk Cousins. Because if he starts keying in and zoning in on and having tunnel vision for just Justin Jefferson, they're gonna get blown out of the water, right? Like, they're gonna lose this game. But if he starts spreading the ball around and forcing the Eagles defense to play him honest, I think that potential matchup of Jobe versus Addison could dictate who wins this game for sure. And I think when I look at this situation, Keith, Josh Jobe, you know, strong physical corner. What was one of the knocks on Jordan Addison? Didn't handle physicality well, but he's such a twitchy, quick route runner that can separate. And Josh Jobe was a little tight in the hips. So it's like, this is like, to me, a matchup of, like, this is a perfect matchup, because each of their strengths is the other person's weakness. So if I'm looking at it from this, I'm a lean on Josh Jobe because of the pass rush as well. I think Kirk Cousins will have to get the ball out of his hands, which will then kind of speed up the process. And Josh Jobe doesn't have to cover for as long in dealing with Jordan Addison, right? Like, I don't know if I want him dealing like post corners, double moves, and different things like that, because once you can get him on them starts type of routes and everything. But if you make him cover quick, he can get a quick two-hand jam, be physical, kind of erase Addison at the line of scrimmage. I think he can do that, Keith.
Yeah, so if I'm the head coach, that's my winning formula right there. I'm trying to isolate Jordan Addison on Josh Jobe or whoever the Eagles now second corner would be, right, without Bradbury being there. And that's even if you have to leave, 8 guys in for protection, right? And only put 3, put a couple people out there. Just, I'm trying to isolate that situation or find some way. And we know that, McConnell does a good job of, Kevin O'Connell does a good job of motioning too, right? Like, so giving a lot of free releases and stuff like that. So some of the same stuff he does for Justin Jefferson, I think if he does for Jordan Addison could eat, right? And this is not a fantasy football podcast, but he's on my fantasy team, DP. I drafted him, right? And so I'm hoping that Jordan Addison goes off. I didn't play him last week, DP. I didn't have him played, and I messed up. That was part of the reason why I lost, right? I made bad decisions, was a bad GM, but I'm putting him in this week. Now, my last question, DP, last matchup, right? Because I really like what we're doing, going through and talk about matchups real quick before we have to transition. When they played the Eagles last year, they didn't have TJ Hockenson, right? That was a trade that was made later on. So now that TJ Hockenson is there, we're talking about the middle of this defense, right? So we talked about we talked about Reed Blankenship, right, being out. So it's a combination of Justin Evans, Terrell Edmonds, Sidney Brown. I want to ask you, we're going to focus on the young guy, Sidney Brown. Do you think that that's with his skill set and also with TJ Hockenson's skill set, is that a matchup that you feel that Sidney Brown could win and could hold his own in?
I think he could hold his own, Keith, and I think he'll be up for the task. Right, one of the most impressive moments of the draft, of watching his tape was watching him battle Sam Laporta. You know what I mean? Which is
fun. It was fun
enough.
both ways, right? It was just like
it was.
This is good on good. I like this.
Dog on dog, and crazy enough, Sam Laporta is also in the NFC North, just like TJ Hockenson. He actually replaced TJ Hockenson with the Detroit Lions. So I think, when you look at Sidney Brown, man, he's just cut from that different type of cloth mentally, where I think he'll be very much up for the task. The big thing is going to be, okay, if they get him matched up one-on-one, will the height advantage of a TJ Hockenson, right? You're talking about putting the helmet higher. If it's one-on-one, skinny post, one-on-one, deep over the bender route, stuff like that, quick sit routes. Can he post up Sidney Brown and use his body to catch the ball in the paint and keep that little guy on his back and not allow him, Sidney Brown's not a little guy, but he's shorter. So, use that height and that arm length and wingspan advantage, because I think Sidney Brown he's athletic enough. I believe that he could absolutely be in TJ Hawkins's hip pocket if they put him man to man, let him be physical, disrupt timing. I think he can do it, Keith. He showed it on tape that he can do. He showed it down at the Senior Bowl. He was out there covering wide receivers.
Yeah,
at the Senior Bowl. So I think he could. It just all depends on, how O'Connell tries to isolate, TJ Hockenson. How does he try to attack that matchup in those in-game adjustments? What do they call it? The game within the game. I would love to see how this plays out.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I agree with your overall sentiment that he can hold his own, right? I think there are going to be times where TJ Hockenson does a savvy veteran move, right, and gets open on him. But I thought that was a key element to it, right? That they didn't have TJ Hockenson last time that they played, and interested to see, him going against, some of the younger guys. But DP, let's keep this thing going, man. We on to segment 3, man. Segment 3 is that is the game predictions. We're ending the show with our game predictions. We talked about matchups. We talked about who's in, who's out. We talked about which young guys to look for. Now we got to put it all together and then come up with who we think is going to win this game. So coming up next, man, we're coming up with our game prediction.
Today's episode of Locked On NFL Draft has been brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers, all right? PrizePicks is really simple to play. You can make your picks, and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes PrizePicks the number one daily fantasy sports app around the world right now, in America, in North America, all right? So what am I picking on this week on PrizePicks? I'm taking Jordan Addison over 42.5 receiving yards and Jalen Hurts over 1.5 touchdowns, okay? So listen to me, guys. This is what you need to do. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. It's time to pick them, Keith. It's time to pick them. The Philadelphia Eagles versus the Minnesota Vikings, a game that was not a game last year, right? Will it be a game this year? Will it be a game tonight? Keith, my prediction for this game, I'm fly Eagles fly, man. I'm picking the Eagles. I can't.
You didn't wait long to get into that, man. I thought you was going to give a little tease or nothing. You just jumped straight into it.
I'm not even going to play with it, Keith. I'm going Eagles. I think Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts comes out kind of with a little attitude, right? Like the Patriots defense was able to kind of hold them in check and hold their offense in check for most of that game, where they didn't look like the Super Bowl runner-ups, right? They weren't dominant, and that's Bill Belichick, physical defense on physical offense, right? The Patriots could match their level of physicality. I don't believe that the Minnesota Vikings defense can match the level of physicality and contain Jalen Hurts as a passer with A.J. Brown. And that was the other thing. You talk about matchups in that game, Keith. The corners for the Minnesota Vikings, Caleb Evans, right? All of those young guys that they have, they had no answer last year. Even with Patrick Peters, they had no answer for A.J. Brown, right? Those in breakers, those slants, those drag routes, those routes where he's winning inside leverage and being a big, swole Batman. Yeah, they didn't know how to defend that, Keith. And then of course now Devonta Smith, of course being 2 years back to back balling, and he's already started this season off strong too. Yeah, no, I'm picking those Eagles, man. I do not believe the Vikings can match that physicality on offense or defense. I think both in the trenches. I think Philly owns the advantage, and I think they get the dub.
Yeah, DP, while you was talking, I was looking. I'm like, okay, is this game home or away? Because that might determine some things. And it's away again. It's at the Eagles again. And I'm like, how do they draw back to back? Because last year they played at the Eagles too, and I was trying to remember. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was a away game too.
If I was the Eagles, if I was the Vikings GM, I'm sending the letter to the schedule makers. Like, bro, what are we doing right now? Like, why are we like? Why are y'all? Then y'all sitting there on Thursday night at night.
Yeah,
back to the link.
We get it 2 years in a row. We had to travel to Philly, and this is not a divisional game, so that's crazy.
Primetime TV, Keith.
Right.
2 years in a row.
2 years in a row. Primetime TV traveling to Philadelphia. That's a hell of a draw right there. But DP, I'm gonna go with the Eagles too, and I don't have to say much more than what you said. The trenches, right? I think the trenches are going to determine this game. I do expect, because I do believe it's early in the season. The Vikings remember getting punched in the mouth last year, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think they want to be embarrassed again. So I think it's going to be a closer game, DP. I do think it's going to be a closer game. I think the Eagles are trying to, start getting that rhythm, right? Because it's still early. The Patriots, I think the Patriots are just a good defense. Like they're they're probably a top 7 defense in the NFL. So they just had a formidable opponent last week. But I do think the Eagles are going to win. They're gonna try to get this thing going. It's a must that they figure out the running back situation. I was excited to, try to see DeAndre Swift in his backfield, but like you said, he was limited. So we'll see how that goes. But I think the Vikings they'll put up some points just because of that secondary. Just find a way to, they'll draw some stuff up and get open. But I am picking the Eagles, DP. I think the Eagles are going to win the game, and then that's gonna close out Thursday night football for us. But DP, that closes out today's podcast, man. And I think that was a pretty good show, man. We're talking Eagles, Vikings. Like we said, we went over everything. The biggest storylines, prospects to watch, the injury report, who's going to play now. And then we did our game predictions. Like we always say, man, y'all tweet at us because we tweet back. Y'all let us know we'll be watching the game tonight. Let us know who you think are going to win, who's going to win the game. Any big plays, y'all talk about it. Let us talk to us. Let us know if there are any players making any plays, man. Like we always say, man, shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us. We definitely appreciate y'all. Make sure to tap in tomorrow. And this week, like every week, we're going live on Saturday. We're going live on Saturday. So make sure y'all tap in with us at 9:30 Central Time, 10:30 Eastern Time. We're going live on YouTube.
Absolutely. Speaking of YouTube, go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode of Locked On NFL Draft. All right. As soon as it's available on YouTube, not just comment and talk to us, but like the videos. Also hit the bell notification so you're notified when anytime that we drop an episode on the channel. All right. So as always, guys, thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Thank y'all for being our everydayers. In terms of Twitter, you can find me, Damian Parson, at DP_NFL, Keith Sanchez at The Talent Code. Talk to us because we do talk back. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.